I thought I would grab a couple of my favorite treasures so that we could add them to unexpected items and turn them into home decor. For more footage of my favorite treasures, stay until the end of this video. I saw this piece sitting on a shelf at a Goodwill, and I knew that it was something we could save because I feel like this is an odd piece and someone may not be able to do anything with it, and then it would just end up in the dumpster. So I paid $3 for it. It is wood. It's had a drawer that's missing. It had a top piece that was originally, I think, a mirror. This was like from the 70s or 80s. People would use them as like a vanity or a little valet area to put their little watches and things like that. So we're going to go ahead and take off these handles. I really wanted to use that side, and even in my brain I couldn't figure out what to do with those little inlaid areas. I thought about molds, I thought about several things, and then I thought, you know what, I think I would rather just use the flat side. So we just flipped it over, and I'm taking this white paint. You can use any white paint just to cover that, because what we're going to do is we're going to use some beautiful recycled paper. Now this is one of my very favorite. I will have the link for it in the description box below. Now I have an affiliate, which is Aunt Bee's Attic. Check the website out. Now don't forget, I do get a small percentage to help pay for the products that I use in my videos. Alright, so what I'm going to do is, after my paint dries on this piece, I'm just using a nice thick coat of Mod Podge. I'm going to let that dry. Make sure when you're doing your Mod Podge that you get it all the way to the edges, all over the piece, a nice thick coat. I tell you what I've noticed with Mod Podge. Once it dries on a wood piece, if there's any tannins or bleed through, Mod Podge will bring it out. You're going to see, I'm going to show you up close. Not that it bothered this project, but it's about the only sealer I've ever seen bring the tannins to the surface, because the chalk paint didn't do it. That's what I used on there. Alright, so now I've cut my little piece out, and I'm just going to use my iron. Grab any iron that you have. Get you some parchment paper or some type of non-stick baking paper. Lay it over top of your decoupage paper. I go over mine about 3 times, making sure I get all of the edges really good, because what it does is it reheats that Mod Podge. And then our piece is completely attached. Once we get that finished, I go around those edges with my little sandpaper, just going down or side to side. Just be real careful, because you can sand up or lift up your paper if you're too rough, going upward in an upward motion. Now we have a nice little clean edge, and our paper, decoupage paper, is finished. That was so easy. The only issue with the iron-on is you have to wait until the Mod Podge dries. Alright, now to finish the wood piece part off, I really wanted a color that kind of blended in with the bird but wasn't as dark as the paper itself. So we're going to use this Fusion Little Lamb. It's an all-in-one paint and sealer, and you can use any kind of paint that you want. I love Fusion. I love DIY clay paints. I love the folk art chalk paints. I just use whatever I want at that time. I also have plenty of the Walmart paints that I use. It really just depends what the project is, and if I didn't want to seal chalk paint or clay paint, and I don't want to with this project, I just want a nice thin paint on here that has its own sealer built in. Alright, so once I get that finished and I let that dry, I want to seal my decoupage paper with this clear wax by DIY. You can see it darkens my paper a little bit, turns it just a beautiful color. I didn't want to wet this with some type of top coat, so the wax is going to be perfect. I just went ahead and carried that all over the paint, because we're going to add some dark wax to this to blend it in just a little bit more with that paper. What I'm going to do is, I'm showing you I'm using this DIY. I think it's just the dark wax, and I'm taking just a brush and basically going over all the paint, getting it in there, and then wiping it back to give it that sort of blended look. After I give it a good coat all over, I take my brush and sort of go tediously all over the little edges of that paper where I sanded it. So if there was any white, it kind of toned it back, and then shadowed it around the whole paper a little bit more. I want this piece to hold like special books or magazines, so I wanted it to be a little bit taller, and I knew that I had all these little lamp parts, and I thought these would make great little brass feet and give it a feature that's a little bit different. I'm not going to paint them, we're just going to leave them the brass. So what I used was Gorilla Glue and let this set up overnight, which worked great, and now I have the cutest little feet on this, and they're not too tall. It was already kind of tall and slim, and I didn't really want to make it any taller. For the back of this, I decided to go ahead and put a piece of cardboard real thin to cover those divots or inlays. That way, when I put this gorgeous piece of like charcoal felt on here, it won't dip in when, you know, if somebody would pick it up, or it's just going to mask the fact that there are those divots back there. Now, I think this could actually be a double-sided display. That felt is so gorgeous. I think you could do some type of different pattern or something on it, but I just wanted to leave it plain because it kind of blends in with that front color. So I'm just going to trim that down and use hot glue again for this. It'll hold it very nicely. For the front of this, I decided to use a piece of decoupage paper from another scrap and this gorgeous Tim Holtz, I think it's a Tim Holtz label. And I'm just going to do an and sign with some black StazOn ink, and I'm going to stamp it off first. That way it's a lighter black instead of real sharp. Add it to that label with a little bit of hot glue, and I'm going to use some rivets to stick in those little holes that's meant for screws, and then put some Gorilla Glue on the back of this label and add it to the center of this piece. I had so much fun displaying this in a vignette, playing around with putting books in it and florals. I wanted to stick everything in this, so let me know if you guys love this one as much as I do. Project 2 and 3, I'll just apologize in advance because I know I have silver lovers on here. My brother gave me these and said, hey, can you do anything with these? And I said, absolutely, I can make those over and put them in my studio, and that's what we're going to do today. Now these are absolutely gorgeous with the silver. They've got some dark to patina them a little bit, but I wanted to make them fit into my studio. So to do that, we're going to give both of these a good coat of black chalk paint. Now I'm just using the Folk Art brand for this. I'm only going to do one of these on camera because they're really simple and a great way to add interest and put something unique in your home decor. Now I didn't stress too much if I didn't get full coverage. I mean, I wanted full coverage, but if there was a little bit of silver peeking here and there, it wasn't that big of a deal because we're going to be using, of course, something that's going to cover most of that up. So what I did is I go ahead and prepare my surface with this clear wax by DIY, which gives it this beautiful sheen. I rub some of that back with just a cloth, still wanting to make sure I have that on there because we're going to be using gold rub and buff to highlight the stripes on this zebra. Now I make sure that I kind of get some down in everywhere, but I really want to focus on the gold mostly being on the stripes, but I don't want it to be stark, and you'll see how we do that coming up. I'm using the European gold. This one has a little bit of a, not bronze look, but it's pretty dark. It's not a very bright gold. It's darker than antique gold to me. So I love to use this one. As you can see, this tube is getting down there, and I'm just going to use a brush, starting out going kind of all over, even hitting down in the divots or the dips of the pattern. But what we do once we kind of get started, I go in and I make sure that certain areas like the ear, I trimmed it out pretty good. Both the ears I'll trim out really well, and then I go around the nose and the eyes and I trim those out, kind of giving them a little bit more, that way they really pop out. Again, I go back to do that. I really just start out just digging in there, and then once I kind of get started, I focus on certain areas of the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and such, and then it's main. You'll see I go back in after we get a lot of the gold on there. and I take my clear wax on a cloth and I go in between the stripes to take some of that gold back out of those striping, the stripes that go down in, that divot down in, because I want the ones that are higher up to have more gold on them. And you'll see coming up the difference in what you're looking at right now than the definition. It's always like that with a project. For me, when I start out, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to put some gold rub and buff. And then it turns into, oh, well, I really only want it here. And that's what I love about clear wax. You most certainly can use it to erase some of other waxes that you put on. I'm going to give you a little close-up here of the zebra and the giraffe after I have them both done, just so you can kind of see how they turned out. And then we'll have photos coming up. You guys have to let me know, did you like the silver better? I know there's definitely silver lovers out there, and I do appreciate that. Let me know in the comments below if you like these. They are going to be hanging on my wall. You'll see that coming up. Now the place that I have them hanging, I've got them on each side of some vintage art that I found, of course thrifting, and they're right above where I take my photos for the projects that we make. So I have a little board set up and a little area, and then I remove some of that stuff when I'm putting my projects on that table, but that's where I take most of my pictures. If you want to have some fun, grab one of these shoe forms. This is something that they would make people's shoes from, and it was like, this one's a child's one. So from my understanding, they would mold the shoes around this, which was, I think, for a specific person. And of course there should have been two. So this one's quite rough. It's got quite a bit of damage. We're going to have some fun with this. You can do anything you want to these. You can put fabric, ribbon, paper. I'm going to be using some decoupage paper, some scraps that I have to turn this into something very unique. I started out and gave this a good messy coat of just white chalk paint. Picked a few scrap decoupage papers out of my stash. And I thought that we would kind of have this, not necessarily a wingtip shoe, but make the toe of it have its own little cool pattern. And I love this smaller damask pattern. This is a Roycycle paper. And I'm just trimming it down a little bit, kind of laying it around, seeing where I want it. And I'm just going to use my favorite glue stick. I've talked about these before. They're the Recollections. Now this is a permanent glue stick. I go ahead and add that to the toe all the way around in a perfect little line, making sure it goes all the way across the toe, down the sides. I use my glue stick to also make sure I get up underneath there. I'm grabbing some saran wrap and just helping that smooth out. It works perfect on this. Now you can see the glue is bringing the tannins through that white chalk paint. It's crazy. Mod Podge is a glue, and we talked about that earlier. It really just draws those out. But it doesn't matter because this is going to be covered in paper. Now, if you want to seal that with something else, of course, and you need it not to show, then you could definitely do that. We've talked about that before. Just use some type of shellac. Now, I'm just molding this around the foot, making sure that glue is really stuck on there. And I'm a person, I don't leave any spots underneath my paper that doesn't have glue. It has to have glue all completely under the paper, or you're going to have bubbles. Now remember, we're not going to worry about this too much. We're just going to have a good time and make it look how we want it to. It is handmade. It's going to have imperfections, wrinkles, things like that. But when you look at the overall projects that you complete, I'm sure they're just gorgeous, and no one's going to be pointing to things that you see that is possibly an imperfection. Now this paper right here, oh gosh, I love it. First of all, it has some type of plants or ferns on it. It's got that gorgeous red flower, and it has scripting, and I also see, I think, some white daisies. So it's the perfect match to go with this sort of Victorian old wallpaper damask look on the toe. And as I was placing this, I really wanted that flower right down there in that corner with that fern looking leaf kind of popping out of it like a feather out of a hat. So I knew that that flower and that piece had to go right there. And when I got this completed on this side, I just went ahead and tore it kind of down the center, almost all the way to the back where the heel was. I didn't want to cut it because that would be just too perfect. So I made sure that I had enough glue, and again finished tearing that. I have completely covered the other side just with pieces. Again, this is going to blend so well. We'll put some dark wax on some of those torn pieces and finish them off. Now, I knew when I was looking through my scraps, I wanted to put some of this scripting, and I thought, what a perfect way to cover up the seam in the front. And then I knew I had to put a piece on the heel to carry it through. So I just cut it with scissors. I didn't worry about tearing it because it didn't matter if it looked kind of neat where we were covering that seam, almost like a little ribbon. I just used the glue and molded it around that, and then took another piece and molded it around the heel. And I love how this is looking, you guys. Oh, I enjoyed this so much. So we still have one more cool thing we're going to add to this as soon as we get this thing as soon as we get the paper where we want it. Well, we're going to do a couple more things. Before we move on to the last two things, we need to clean this thing up. So how we're going to do that is just use my little finger sander and go around all the edges and get all the excess paper off. I'm just showing you, see how crazy this looks right now? Trust me, trust the process. Before I do the sanding, I do go ahead and use my scissors and cut all that extra paper off, and then just sand all around the edges, being mindful that I don't want to sand towards my paper and lift it up. Checking all the edges. If there's any edges that's loose, I go ahead and use my glue stick and glue those down for a nice tight seal. Once we've got this all cleaned up, we're going to go ahead and use some of this cast iron fusion paint on the wood that's left open at the top because it was just so damaged. And I do love a good dinged up, cool looking piece, but I thought this deserved some paint to finish that top piece off. And I'm going to leave the metal on the bottom heel. Now I've got a little bit of white paint I got to clean off of there if you see that in the video, but I'm taking that cast iron and going all over this footing. It's almost like it's very soft, like it's not a cushion. It's almost reminds me of cork, but I want to go ahead and cover that because it's not cool like the metal piece on the heel. We're going to seal this paper in with some clear wax, just like we did our other pieces. And I'm going to take black wax all around the edges of this, not getting too much on that damask paper because I don't want to darken that up a lot, but just around the edges and anywhere that might have some white paper showing or there might be a little tear, this black wax is going to finish that off nicely. Then I'm going to use this knob. I had this taken off of a broken hanger that had like 4 or 5 different types of knobs. This is not vintage, but we're going to use it because I thought the red would go great with this shoe. Now I'm using Gorilla Glue. I'm not going to use any hot glue because I'm just going to set this to the side and let this set up overnight. And our little piece is finished. This is truly one of a kind, unexpected type of home decor. It's taking something that no one uses again for its original purpose. Lots of people do these, make these over. There's tons of photos on Pinterest. I've made them over more than once. You can hang these on a wall, sit them on a shelf, use them as a paperweight. They're quite heavy. You can add these to a block and turn them into bookends. This one's just going to stay in my studio with all of the other things that I fall in love with that I make with you all on this channel. Now, if you can't find the vintage ones, there are those wood cedar looking ones. I see those a lot of times at thrift stores. Pick them up. You can do the same thing. Now don't worry, we have 6 more projects left. This one is so heartwarming. You all, if you've watched my channel for a while, you know my oldest son always looks for me little things here and there. My oldest son was at a building getting ready to be demolished, and he saw this beautiful marble box sitting in a window and said, "That's going home to Mom." He said, "I thought you could do something with it." And I said, "You know what? We are just going to add some gorgeous feet to this and raise it up to the height that it deserves." We're just going to remove these. They're really easy, just little foam sticky things with a blade. Get that cleaned off on the bottom. Now he said there was a lot of old change in this and it was just left in a window. He brought it home, he cleaned it, and all I had to do was take my Gorilla Glue and these beautiful legs and just add them on. Once I got the glue in there, I kind of brushed it all around. I went ahead and took some just painter's tape and went all around every corner, got all the extra glue off, made sure that each corner was really tight with that glue, with that painter's tape, left it overnight, and now we have a gorgeous box that we've taken to the next level and made it look more regal with these beautiful legs. This just warms my heart, this kind of gift, especially from one of my children. It just tells me that I must have done something right as a mother for them to look at things that are not just disposable in this day and time, and to bring it home to me, because he knows how much I love treasures that have been thrifted, found, secondhand. I hope you guys enjoyed this project. I also hope that you got some inspiration that everything doesn't have to be totally changed to be made over, upcycled, or repurposed. This next project, I love making these, and I've made many of these. I generally sell these in my vendor booth, so just know that people love to purchase these as home decor or just to display things on. Now you can get these from Amazon. Michael's has a whole section in their like wreath forms and things to make wreaths with. They have men, women, it's so cool. So I think these came from Michael's recently, $3.99, so they're very inexpensive. Now you can definitely put your own spin on a mannequin head. What I like to do is take scraps from my decoupage papers and from my transfers, because it serves 2 purposes. One, it gives the mannequin head this unique look that you're never going to be able to replicate, and 2, it uses up a lot of small pieces that you may not be sure of what to do with, or that may not fit on a large specific project. I will tell you, if I make one that has like a white base and not a darker style, those do sit in my vendor booth a lot longer than ones that may have like a black base, meaning darker decoupage papers. So just a few things about when I'm making a mannequin head that sticks out to me. I like to have something I stick up in that little area, and you can just shove it on in the styrofoam. It's real easy. That way, if I want to hold on to something other than the head, I have that piece sticking out of the bottom. Also, this is very messy. It's very sticky. It's going to stick to you. It's going to, some of the papers might pull off on your thumbs. It's okay. We'll fix that stuff at the end. Really just trust the process and keep going, because overall, once you get done, you're going to love how these look. And just remember, a lot of things you put on here, some of them will get covered up. Just make sure the things you don't want covered up, that you kind of just go around them and leave them more as like a highlight of the piece. So I use water when I'm spraying larger pieces on here. Sometimes I use water just to thin out the Mod Podge when I'm brushing it. I use a large brush, or something that's kind of like a flat brush. Plenty of Mod Podge. I just squirt it straight on the mannequin head and then go over it with my wet Mod Podge brush. You can again spray water. You're gonna have wrinkles. That's perfectly fine. I use the back of my brush, and you'll see that coming up to help smooth out those wrinkles. You might have to cut some of the pieces to get them to curve around the head, but like I said, once you get all these pieces on, it absolutely ends up looking gorgeous. Now, of course, that's just my opinion. Some people might look at this and say it's a hot mess and totally nothing they would own. Everybody has a different style. This is just something I enjoy, and I think it's unique to have in your home to display things that you love, and I'll show you some things at the end of what we can display with this. Initially, I tried to cover the whole head with larger pieces and then go back in with smaller, more detailed pieces that's going to show at the end on top and be more of the design instead of the base. Keep that in mind. You may want to cover it with just like all music paper and then add designs. I've done that before. I've used old music paper and decoupaged it, not just decoupage thin paper. You may want to start out and put all book pages on here and then add in the design that you want, whether it be butterflies, it be plants, I mean, you know, gnomes, whatever is your style. Me, I just kind of do it as I go. I pick out a pile of decoupage papers that I think coordinate and that I want to use on it, kind of staying in the same style, and then just place them on there. If something looks weird and sticks out, then I'll put like a in between it and a light color, say this dark color for instance. I'm putting a light color there, and I might add something a little medium color in between those two so it kind of blends, and instead of just a hard stop of the different colors. But again, sometimes I don't. You won't know until you kind of look at it at the very end and like, oh, okay, I need to blend that color just a little bit more before it gets to this beige. Now, we're not going to do this whole thing on camera. I have shown you kind of the basics of how I start out with it, but I want to really focus on the face and show you how I always finish my faces off for now until, you know, that evolves, because things do evolve. So when you're doing the face on your mannequin, make sure that it's something that you enjoy, what you want to look at, how you want to express yourself. That's the place I feel like the creativity can really make a difference in this head, because that's what the focal point is the face. All right, now I want to take this time to say hello to all of the people that watch this channel. I know there are a lot of people that are not subscribed. Welcome. Thank you for coming back and watching, even though you aren't subscribed. Lots of subscribers, new ones. Welcome. Thank you for the ones that have said hello to me in the comments. Let me know you're new. So happy you are here. And hello to all of my old friends that we talk all the time. You know who you are. Every week, every video, you're in the comment section. Don't forget, we have several projects left, and we're going to talk about several things at the end of this video, updates, things that you might be interested in, so stay tuned. For the face, I generally don't put anything too busy. Now, of course, this piece has a lot going on, but it's sort of neutral because I usually want to add things to the face in certain areas to pop, and to do that I need something that's not covered in, you know, like a bunch of ferns, or if they are, they're bright green, you know, things like that. So, or a bunch of numbers on the face, because I might add those, but just in sections. So I'm just using this. It's a recycled paper with music. It does have a few little things in the background, but nothing that's going to overwhelm what we do to finish this piece off on the face area. Once I finish covering the face, all of the neck, the whole thing, I'm going to let this dry very well overnight, and it'll dry completely overnight. Then I get out the things that I want to add at the end, and usually that is transfers. And I have used things like stickers, some of Tim Holtz's just ephemera or paper things. I've cut things off of paper like cardstock and used them. So you don't have to be limited to just transfers. And like I said, some of these transfers are from Dollar Tree, so there are cost-effective ones out there. The first thing I love to do is cover one of the eyes with usually a butterfly. This time I'm using a transfer butterfly, but I have used the Dollar Tree butterflies. They have some beautiful colors, hot pink, aqua, and then the natural ones. But I put this over one of the eyes and kind of tilted because I just think it gives it like a mysterious look, and you all know I love that kind of thing. But you could put butterflies on both eyes. You could decorate the eyes and make them look like they're actual human eyes. You can use jewels. I've done that before. The possibilities are just endless. Have fun with this part. Now I have a little crack that happened in my eye, which ended up being a happy accident because I thought, well, let me put a little bit of this branch on there. Well, it was very dark and it stuck out to me like a sore thumb, and I thought, well, why don't I just do the rest of that branch and have it, you know, going across the butterfly? And then I thought, oh, well, let me see what else I have that looks like vines. So we ended up with a whole section of vines and stuff coming off of this eye, and I loved it. It made it look even more mysterious. Looking at this now, you can see how this is coming together. It's looking more like it's an actual piece of, you know, art or home decor versus in the beginning. So see, like I said, trust the process. I'm just going to add more like certain plants and just leaves coming off of that. Now I want to show you this. Sometimes when I make or use those transfers that has the scripting, I don't use the scripting, and then I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with this? So I'm just going to use this and cut it in sections and put it all over this head, just in different areas. But to start out with, I wanted to go ahead and put like a section right under the right eye, and then I go opposite below, this is the left eye, sorry, right under the right eye down on the cheek, kind of like catty corner of each other, just so we have a couple pieces of that on the face. Now here is where I was talking about earlier, how to blend areas in. So I have that dark piece, the light piece. I'm just taking a fern and kind of sticking in between those so it marries those two pieces together instead of just having a stark, I guess, contrast right there, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I thought, you know, I think I want to put something right there. There wasn't much on that paper of the beige or the cream color anyways. So I just wanted to show you this so you would kind of see what I talked about when I was saying blending pieces together with other items. Also wanted to show you here, I just added a label that maybe I didn't want to do anything with or put on a bottle but wasn't sure. So I just added on there, and then I start adding things kind of a little bit on the edges of it to blend it in with that instead of this weird label just sticking out there. We're also going to do something else that's going to tone this back, but you can take your fingernails and kind of scratch the edges of that label off just to make it look more tattered to go along with your project. I did that too. So I lost some footage when I first started adding to this eye and lip this Pennies from Heaven. It's kind of a copper color I wanted to play off of. I had put a mushroom on the cheek right there. Again, I'm so sorry, I've lost some footage, but I'm showing you, I had to dry this a little bit because we're going to do the second coat on here together, and I want to make sure there's nothing else other than that mushroom, and then I put a label on her neck that you didn't see. Like I said, some of that we didn't do on camera, but this I'm just showing you. I go around the outline of the lips and I outline them quite far because I want them to be prominent and that you can actually tell it's a set of lips there. You can do this in any color, black, blue, again, whatever goes with your style. You can put jewels on the lips, on the eyes. I've done kind of feathers off the eye. But I'm putting 2 coats of this copper penny or Pennies from Heaven by DIY. We're going to let that dry. And now I'm just going to do a quick spin and kind of show you what it looks like. It's almost finished, but we've gotten all of our pieces on there. I've gotten all of the rub-ons that I wanted. You can see some of those letters. I had a little bit of a sunflower left, some of those little animal transfers. And this is just how, and the ferns, how I made it kind of go, and then into another leaf, and I added a little rose bud upside down. So that's kind of how I like to do these. This piece overall is sealed very well, however the transfers are not, so we're just going to use a wax and not re-wet all of that paper. We're going to use a clear wax, really good, because I want to use a dark or black wax to cover any imperfections. In other words, edges of white paper, any little holes that might be there. That black wax is going to fill all of that in and look really, really nice. Before you move on to the black wax, make sure you wipe off any excess of your clear wax. You want to do the same thing with your black wax. Wipe it off after you get your initial coat on. I'm just showing you there some little spots this is going to fill in, because if the paper came off, it stuck to, you know, my finger or whatever it was sticking to at that time. And if you want your black wax to stick more, or to have more of a coverage, you can leave it on for, you know, an hour or two and then go back and rub off a little bit, or you can just rub off a tad or pat it mostly when you first put it on. I generally like to put my mannequin heads on a candle holder, but today I thought we would use this little cage thing and a lid from a can. So we're recycling some things, which again is something I love to do. I'm going to use some Gorilla Glue, put that on there, and we're going to put this directly on our styrofoam base. I'll use hot glue just in the center of that, but the Gorilla Glue is going to give that a permanent hold long term for this piece. I'm just putting on there silver, no need to paint it. You're not going to see that. We'll cover the edges up and we will paint the bottom. To paint the cage, it has this sort of green color, and I didn't want to cover that completely up, so I just grabbed some of this Fusion all-in-one cast iron. I'm just going to put a haphazard coat all over this, let that dry, and then we're going to sand the top of this cage because it has a plastic coating, and I want to get down to the metal and make sure that that metal makes good contact with the metal on the lid, the can lid. So I left the can lid silver, and you can see that right there. We're going to make sure they have good contact. Once they dry, I will paint anything that's left silver and put a couple good coats. I finished this off with a piece of gorgeous green ribbon that I got on clearance at Hobby Lobby for 99 cents. Just went over the edge of that mannequin and the seam of that lid. You'll see in the photo coming up, I only used hot glue. Let me know what you think of this one. I styled it with a couple hats, but we have another project coming up I'm going to style it with, but I didn't want to spoil it for you all. Our next project is very easy. I want you to think about any albums you might have at your home, or when you're out thrifting, grab them, especially one like this. First of all, it is a gorgeous album without doing anything to it. It was $1.99 marked down. It's black. It has a beautiful spine on it. I didn't really want to change much on here, but I could have went to the inside and put some paper. I could have redid the spine, but I picked one of my papers that I thought would just change the very front piece and change it easily into something gorgeous. So this is one of recycled papers. Again, don't forget I'll have all the links in the description box below. It's more of a smaller size with several blocks on it. So we're going to use this pharmacist piece. Now we don't get the whole word on there, but that's okay because I'm going to cut off a little bit of the typewriter at the bottom too, just so it's not perfect at the bottom with the whole picture and then cut off at the top. That's something I like to look at when I'm decoupaging. If I'm going to cut part of the top off and it's not going to look right, then I'll just cut off part of the bottom. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and give this a good coat of white chalk paint. You can use any paint. I will tell you, I thought about using just regular glue stick for this, and when I started, I decided that I needed to paint this white because I was afraid the paper wouldn't be light enough with this background. Once it dried, it would have been a lot darker. So what I had to do was paint over. I'd put a little strip of glue on that edge, and you'll see right here it does exactly what glue does when you put paint over it. It starts cracking, which I never thought about a glue stick, using glue stick, letting it dry, and then using paint on top of it to get a crackle. But here you go. I found out something, new, which, it should be obvious because it is a glue. We're going to do the iron-on method with this, so we're going to put a good coat of Mod Podge, let that dry, get out our iron. Any iron will work for this. A piece of parchment paper, and place our decoupage on top of this dried Mod Podge. We're going to put our parchment paper on top of our decoupage, and we are going to do a few good rounds of ironing on this to get it reattached. When I was ironing this, I did flip it upside down so I could make sure that initially I flipped it upside down so I could make sure that the lettering was straight on that top piece. To remove those edges, I just use my sander and sand all of them off. I do end up tearing the one on the left off because, you know, I wasn't going to try to sand on the album. So I just used my fingers and kind of tore that off. Then I went around all of this. Well, first I clear waxed it because, you know, that way it'll have a protector in case people's fingers, you know, thumbprints get on it. Clear waxed it, and then I go around with dark wax on all the edges to blend any of that paint that's showing underneath the paper and just this edge here. This was such an easy way to update an item. Now, like I said, I love the spine, but you could go many steps further with this piece. I think this would be great just to have sitting around on display, and of course with some of your favorite photos. Let me know what you think about this one. Project number 8 and 9. I have this photo I'm getting ready to show you. This is a Pinterest inspired. I love this photo. I've had it saved for a while. I've been collecting vintage little purses. To get started, I thought we would go over to my little pin board. I have this right where I sit and work with my regular job, and sometimes you see it in the videos behind me. I put special little things I've collected over the years or been given that I want to look at every day. I brought one of my little purses over here to kind of compare and grab a couple pins that might work on this piece. Now, I'm grabbing this beautiful floral rose one and this antique or vintage, it's a Victorian pin that they would wear to someone's funeral with their photo in it. Now, these I'm showing you are beautiful pendants made out of glass that one of my friends made me. There are cauldrons and then of course a heart. These are, I think that blue one with the flower looks like it's been made out of eyeglasses, just the lenses. And then the other ones are pins with dried flowers from the 70s. There's a Victorian choker. It's actually really, really old. It's another dried flower pin. Those are just some pins I've received from my work. A little Florida, like a tourist change purse from probably the 70s. Some photos. These are called tin types. They were made out of tin. Little broken doll. Just little things that a carved letter opener. Just little things that spark inspiration and that I just love looking at. I thought I would show you a little stack of purses that I've been collecting just for this video to give you some inspiration in case you don't have the exact ones I'm using. Now, of course, we're going to be using this one, which is this beautiful floral, definitely a vintage purse. We're not going to be doing anything to damage this because of the purse itself. The next purse, we will definitely be doing some things that will alter it, but it's okay. It's not as precious to me as this one is. When you think about purses for decor, you could think about a couple of these would be great for summer beach decor. I mean, of course you can carry them. Some of these I would definitely carry if I don't do anything with them. This one is so precious, you all. This is from the 70s. This is such a beautiful example of 70s, just the little floral patterns, a little gingham. I forget what they call the little tiny flowers that's on patterns. There's another name for them other than flowers. And then this checker inside, and you can see the stitching. It just is gorgeous. The first one we are going to alter is this one. It is almost identical to the it's very similar to the inspiration photo from Pinterest. I am going to have to alter the strap, but before we do that, I wanted to show you some examples of things you could use if you don't have what I'm going to use or what the inspiration used. So I grabbed some photo frames. The very top, very shiny gold is from Temu. The one in the middle that's pewter is probably from the 90s, early 2000s. And then the gold one on the very bottom is definitely a 70s or 80s frame. Also, I showed you some paper frames from Tim Holtz. You can definitely cut out and make your own frame. And then I'm showing you these vintage black and white photos. There's lots of vintage black and white photos you can purchase just about anywhere, antique malls, eBay. You can also, Tim Holtz has his own line that has photos. I'm just showing you how these frames look on here, and then you'll see the one that I actually pick for this. I picked 3 of my favorite black and white photos out of my stash that I kind of set to the side and think I might make something with. Look at this little girl on that phone. Is that not gorgeous? She was a hard choice. Trains, oh my goodness. I love this train. I think it really speaks to back in the, industrial time, and it just is more sort of like not too girly. And then of course these nurses walking out from work. I have a lot of old vintage nurse stuff because I had saved up stuff to make a nurse junk journal and I just haven't gotten to it. But you'll have to wait and see which ones we used. So because I want to mimic the inspiration photo, I'm going to cut my strap down and just hot glue that. That's it. Now if you want to sew this and put a seam through it on your sewing machine, go ahead. If you want to wrap some type of ribbon around it, go ahead. I just wanted it to be glued together and it just to be black up there. You're not going to notice it because that's where it's going to be hanging. I decided to use the gold frame, probably from the 70s. I'm going to use it horizontal and just put some hot glue in there to hold the glass in. Also, I'm going to take all the parts out, and then the back that has that little thing that holds it up, I can't think of the name of that, I'm just going to tear that off because we don't need that bulk. And I decided to use the train photo. So once I get all this put in together, I'm going to take that back off, and I'm just going to use hot glue to attach this. But before we do this, I want to use this crocheted, it's part of I think a collar, and I end up kind of putting it around in a circle large enough to go behind this frame, cutting off the excess, putting little snips in it to make it lay flatter, and then just using hot glue to get that put down in several places. I love this type of project. Just watching this back is just getting me so excited because it's just fun. Taking things that you wouldn't use for home decor and turning them into home decor. I mean, that's the ultimate upcycle altering to me. Now that hot glue gun is giving me a hard time. I did get a new one. I'm really excited about that. The inspiration piece definitely came from Pinterest, but I have seen Sherry over at Canterbury Cottage. I love her channel when I get time to watch it. She has used these things to put, or purses or bags to put plants in, which I think is a great idea. Definitely something that I would do, and I think we might have on this channel too. So now we've moved on to our second project, which is project number 9, or our second purse. And I'm just pulling out, I have this little container filled with broken things, old pins, new pins, lockets, vintage, just whatever I see. Now this one is definitely a vintage pin. Isn't that beautiful? None of this is like real gold or anything like that. That's a vintage one as well. These, oh my goodness, these earrings are definitely old, clip-on, and look at that beautiful turquoise color or aqua. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have a hard time separating with either one of those. So how we're gonna do this is we're just gonna pin these on, and we're just gonna stick them in, and if we can use the pin part, we will. If we can't, then we'll take little stick pins to hold them in place so that this can be hung on the wall. Now the piece in the middle is actually a locket, so we're just gonna take a little stick pin and stick through the eye of the locket hole to hold it in place. You all have to let me know what you think about these. Which photo would you have picked for the larger purse? And would you use a purse just to display some of your favorite brooches and lockets? Our last and final project, number 10, is a fun project to inspire you to definitely be creative. I always look for glasses when I'm out thrifting, and I do have some truly vintage and antique glasses, but I did not want to alter them, so I found this newer style, well, they look vintage, the tortoiseshell readers, and this truly vintage, probably from the 80s red frame. Now we'll probably do something with those at Christmas, but I thought today we would do these newer readers. I went ahead and of course these were only 99 cents. So for them to start out with, I went ahead, added 2 coats of this white chalk paint. Now it acted like it didn't want to attach, I'm assuming from the anti-reflective coating that was on here, but because it's chalk paint, it stayed on, dried very well, didn't bubble up or flake or anything. Once I finished and let both sides dry, I went ahead and grabbed my IOD Antiquity stamp and 2 of the Dapper animals off of that, and just my black Stays On ink, which dries almost instantly, doesn't smear. Went ahead and used both these stamps, just kind of like from the right below the chin up, added those. Once I let them dry, I went ahead and added a clear coat of wax over these, and then a dark coat of wax. But I tell you, I should have used more of a cream colored paint, because I went back in with my Fusion Antiquing Glaze just to tone these back even more, because they just still was too bright for my taste. If you stayed until the end of this video, leave a sunglasses emoji or the word sun. Let me know you're still here. Also tomorrow, July the 12th, which is my sister's birthday, I'm going junking with her and my mom. Tomorrow, July 12th, is the new IOD release. I have worked with Beth over at Aunt Bee's Attic to bring all of the products to the Cozy Junk Studio to make future projects with you guys. Now listen, if you are interested in any of those products and you want to support my channel, click on the link in the description box below, or I'm going to have a community post about the release tomorrow. There'll be a link in there. You can click on that link as well. That helps support my channel. I get a few pennies to help pay towards products that we use on this channel. Now Beth is super sweet. It's a family-owned business. Her daughter works with her. They have a little business out of Ohio. She ships really fast and always has the lowest prices. All right, you guys, I'll see you all real soon in the next video.